Well, history was made today. You're listening to The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, also on FM at 93.3, also on 570 AM KLIF and 96.3 HD2. Trump has been found guilty on 34 felony counts. And I want to hear your reaction. I want you to get on the phone. I've done enough talking. You can do some talking now. I want to hear from you. 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. Because now that we have the verdict, now there's some new questions to answer here. First, do you think he got a fair trial? What do you think will happen next? Do you think this will help him or hurt him in the polls? Does this make you more or less likely to vote for him? Also, get ready to hear the phrase convicted felon Donald Trump in every media report from here for the rest of your life. And my first reaction is, hey, congrats, overreaching hard left lawfare proponents. I think you may have just guaranteed Trump's election in November. Let's hear from Anthony Russo, host of the Truth Will Set You Free podcast and a regular guest on The James Show. Anthony, your reaction to the Trump verdict?
I'm pretty surprised. I kept saying that he'd get a couple. There would be something guilty, but again, I didn't think it'd be all 34 counts. I thought a couple guilty verdicts would help him. I also wasn't, from a legalese perspective, the way that Judge Merchan set it up, I don't know if it made it impossible to split up the counts, to find a couple things guilty here and there. I mean, the actual way that he had an unprecedented discussion with the jury instructions to say that they could essentially not agree on his guilt, but think he was guilty of something and it would be unanimous. I think that was also something that was shocking to me, which no matter how much I looked it up, I have never seen anything like it. But to have a full, completely guilty verdict, I could tell you the left is jumping up and down. I think if it was halfway, here and there, a couple guilties, I think that would have looked better for Trump than the way that it is right now. I don't know. This is a weird one. Like I was shocked to hear it. It was almost like I'm watching news that it's unprecedented in my 41 years.
All right,
like,
he's speaking live. Can we just go to him outside the courtroom? He's speaking live right now.
Go for it.
You want to back it up for just like 10 seconds or so, or you want to pick it up live? Because he just stepped out of the courtroom. Also, the new info we have: sentencing set for July 11th. So that's going to happen after the debate. How weird is this going to be? All right, you ready? This is Trump live outside the courtroom.
Okay. Yeah, Judge, if you'll hold on just a second. We see President Trump now. He is walking out. Let's listen.
Trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. But the real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA, and the whole thing, we didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration in order to wound or hurt an opponent, a political opponent. And I think it's just a disgrace. And we'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end and we'll win. Because our country's gone to hell. We don't have the same country anymore. We have a divided mess. We're a nation in decline, serious decline. Millions and millions of people pouring into our country right now. From prisons and from mental institutions, terrorists. And they're taking over our country. We have a country that's in big trouble. But this was a rigged decision right from day one with a conflicted judge who should have never been allowed to try this case, never. And we will fight for our Constitution. This is long from over. Thank you very much.
Why should voters vote for convicted felons?
And from there, he turns around and walks away from all the follow-up questions. Anthony Russo, your reaction to Trump's statement?
I mean, he was a little shorter than usual. You could definitely tell that. I think he even looked a little surprised that it went that full direction. And he said exactly what I think is on the minds of anybody with a brain in this country, that this was a kangaroo court. This was directed. This is a judge that shouldn't have been there. This was a setup. I mean, we've heard him say it before, and having him hearing him say it again at the end is you were just as a sane human being, and I hate to talk poorly about the opposite side. There's no way that this can look fair to anybody. And he said the one thing that. Go ahead.
Well, you have CNN, you have MSNBC, and of course they're the sort of vanguard of the other side of the paradigm. But we all have Democrats or at least lefty-leaning people in our lives that, they're not bought off by the major corporations or part of the elite. I think half of the country sees this and they're okay with it because they've been trained that this guy is Hitler. He's terrible. He's racist. He's sexist. He's bigoted. He's homophobe. He hates children. He hates puppies. He hates women. He hates people of color. And I think that's wrong to say all the country sees this and they know what happened here. No, I think half the country's cool with this.
No, you're right. And I had to be specific. I said all the people that actually have a rational thinking brain.
Right.
And people can see this as, well, it's a good thing for my side, but they should, anybody that can really truly think about what's happening should know that the judge shouldn't have been there. It's really weird that he got placed. The instructions to the jury don't make sense. It's going to be overturned based on, and this is where I've been listening to stuff earlier, trying to understand the legal side of this. When it gets overturned, or when it even gets tried to be overturned, it's going to be very interesting because they can go back and look at some of the judge not allowing certain things to be heard by the jury, which can then come down on Judge Merchan. I think that although this is good for him, this is what they wanted this is what they wanted out of him. I think this will be the end of his career once the appeal happens. He was already told that you got a slap on the wrist.
Wait, you mean this is the end of the judge's career?
I believe so. I think he understands that, though. That was
you don't think he'll be a hero? This guy's going to be able to write books or probably get nominated to the Supreme Court.
I don't think he'll get nominated to the Supreme Court. I think he will be able to write as many books as he wants. I think he is financially set the rest of his life. But if it does get overturned, here's the deal: if it doesn't get overturned, that doesn't happen. But if it gets overturned, they will look at the decisions that Judge Merchan made to not allow certain information be allowed in the case. And if it will then go down on Judge Merchan's career, or look poorly on him, but he did his job. This is what he needed to do. No matter what, the marketing campaign, his convicted felon is running for president. So he did what he needed to, and I think that he has a fine life ahead of him, but I don't think after they overturn it that he will have a career as a judge.
So I really look forward to this sentencing situation because, look, a lot could happen between now and then. And one thing that we know is going to happen, because sentencing has been set for July 11th, we have a debate coming up on June 27th. And we can have a situation where if Biden does poorly at that debate, then they may be scrambling for a new candidate at the same time that Trump is getting sentenced. And so do we have one party without a candidate and one party with a candidate that's going to prison? I mean, we could be in just a real circus coming up in about, 6 weeks?
You got it. And you know what I've been talking about for a long time. I think that early date for the debate is a setup to actually remove Biden from the Democratic ticket.
Yeah, I love that theory. I can't argue. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I can't poke holes in it. So that'd be interesting if you're correct. Thank you very much, Anthony Russo.
Take it easy, brother.
Check him out on the Truth Will Set You Free podcast. Where you're already listening to podcasts, just search for that one and throw it into the rotation. The Truth Will Set You Free. That's Anthony Russo. I want to hear from you next. I have a couple of good people lined up. I think I'm going to start with you, Harry. But if you have some comments, you need to get your voice heard, this is a good place to do it. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. You don't have to be a regular listener of The James Show. It could be one of you guys who are getting roped in from 570 AM or 96.3 HD2 KLIF. But for everyone, it's the same phone number, 800-288-9227. Was this a legit trial? Did he get a fair trial? Do you think the jury was fair? Do you think this will help him or hurt him? Do you think this will make you or anyone else more or less likely to vote for him? And one of the reactions I'm already seeing online is, congrats, you just guaranteed Trump's re-election. What do you think about that? 800-288-9227. This is The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP 93.3 FM, 570 AM KLIF, and 96.3 HD2. Welcome. This is The James Show. I am your host, James Parker. On a whole bunch of signals right now. 820 AM, 93.3 FM, 570 AM, and 96.3 HD2. In the breaking news, Trump found guilty on all 34 felony counts. Was it a fair trial? Trump came out and said it was a sham, kangaroo court, witch hunt, kind of what you expected. Next step, sentencing happens July 11th. And I'm at the position where, like, I almost dare you, try and put him in prison. See what happens. See what, because they don't know that they've overreached yet. I think you know. I think I know. I think a lot of people know, but they don't know. I think they think that they're saving the world from the Hitleriest Hitler that ever Hitlered. But I don't think this reaction is going to go the way that they expect it to go. 800-288-9227. Harry, thanks for hanging on. You're on the James Show. What's your reaction to Trump being found guilty today, sir?
You bet. Well, I'm embarrassed for our judicial system and so much for a jury of your peers. I'm frightened for our constitutional republic and several things. You mentioned Hitler, and Roland Freisler was the judge, jury, and executioner of everybody that opposed Adolf Hitler. You look at Stalin, you look at Mao, you look at what happens in Cuba, you look at North Korea, Iran. This is the United States of America. We are free people. We have a constitution. We have a republic. This kind of stuff cannot be allowed to continue. We need to stand up and pray for our country and hope to heck this thing is overturned.
Well, I don't think it's the powers that be in the system that have evolved into something that's gotten out of control. I think the big change has happened within the American people. And as much as people hated Reagan or hated George Bush or either George Bush, this level of hatred for Donald Trump has been sensationalized and sort of done that 1984 2 minutes of hate thing for so long and have people so rabid and scared of this guy. I think the scary lesson here isn't that the powers that be overreach. It's that half of the population has been trained to hate this guy so bad, they're willing to overlook all of these constitutional reaches in order to take down a political opponent. And I think that's far scarier than the overreach from these judges or people in the jury.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks for calling in.
Well, I know that people will say thank you for your time.
Thank you. Bye. Russ in Springtown, you're next on the James Show. Your reaction to Trump being found guilty on 34 felonies.
I wouldn't say whether it was a fair trial. I'd say this. In the 2020 election, I said that the government elected for who they wanted for president. Biden is weak. He cannot control the executive branch. And the executive branch likes it that way. All the heads of these agencies, they gain power. They're corrupt. They get money. Our government has its own news outlets. When I was little, we used to call the Soviet news outlet Pravda. Well, we've got plenty of that going on. I think our government opposes Trump because he could actually control the executive branch. And I don't think those people want to give up the power. I think they particularly elected Biden. I think you could look at D.C., how it voted. I think you could look at Virginia, how it voted. I think you could look at the state capitals, how they voted. The government elected who they wanted. And in this next election, Trump will have to win by an awful lot because there's going to be a lot of cheating. And the government is going to continue to try to hold on to people that will make it bigger and grow in power. And so that's what I think.
I like how measured you were. You didn't say a whole lot of ya knows and ums and stutters or anything. You sound very calm and collected and not emotional right now. And I got to tell you, I'm pretty impressed at how well people are handling this, because you have a right to be angry. You have a right to think, oh my goodness, if this can happen to Donald Trump, when will we ever get a free election? When will we ever get another fair shot? I mean, is this apparatus that's in D.C., are they really out of control and have this power? Well, we're about to find out, because the real answer to that is going to happen November 5th. And we're going to learn a lot about ourselves before this year is over. And this just makes it a little more stark for all the people that are okay with this. Really? Are you sure you're okay with this? That's I'm dying to talk to someone who is okay with this. Let me call in. I would love to hear from you. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Because if this makes anything apparent, It makes the idea that the club that George Carlin talked about, the comedian, it's a big club and you ain't in it. Well, there is a big club. It's what some have colloquially called the deep state. But, there's sort of this Hollywood elite circles that the real power brokers run in. And this makes it obvious that if you do believe in such things and there is some sort of elite cabal that puppet masters the rest of us, well, then you can't say that Donald Trump's part of that group. Donald Trump is not one of the elite. He's not one of the privileged. He's not one of the people who gets the exceptions. It's the guy that has the son that's getting millions of dollars from China and Ukraine and Russia and Albania and Kazakhstan. And he's got hours of footage of smoking crack and doing hookers and illegal guns. And he's not getting convicted on 34 counts. Hunter Biden is walking around unconvicted, but Donald Trump, 34 felonies. This facade that he is some sort of privileged, evil dictator that can't stand up after this conviction today. This takes that entire narrative and throws it away. John in Whitewright, you're going to be next up. John, thanks for calling the James Show. Your thoughts on Trump being found guilty on 34 felonies?
Honestly, I hate to not break from the rest of the group, but it's a sham. And I think the saddest part about this whole thing is what it shows about the control apparatus. And it does still have some bite in it. And I thought, for a while we were getting, the upper hand, but this has just basically proved that they can take what I understand to be a federal charge, bring it down to a state level, get a judge and a corrupt DA, and have them, the judge whose, I guess, daughter works with the Democrat Party directly.
Yes.
And I mean, how is this not a conflict of interest? You are taking the opposite party, the Republicans, and persecuting them through a daughter, essentially, of the judge who runs for the opposite political party. And if that doesn't scream corruption, I don't know what does.
Do you think if the roles were reversed, you'd see more people on your side of the aisle actually defending the person on the other side of the aisle that's being persecuted through lawfare?
Yes and no. So I think back to the Republicans when they had the chance to, bring up Biden, either impeachment or something along the line, and they just declared, oh, he's too old and can't remember.
Bro, if they didn't lock up Hillary Clinton after her whole email thing, who's on the good side and who's using lawfare and who's exploiting it. I mean,
exactly.
I mean, how obvious was that actual breaking of felonies, and it got a pass, but we'll see. 800-288-9227. If you have any more comments, I'd love to hear from you. Also, stay put because next you're going to hear from Raven Harrison, a regular commenter on the show, and we'll get her reaction to Trump being found guilty on 34 felony counts. This is The James Show. I am your host, James Parker, on 820 AM, 570 AM, 93.3 FM, and 96.3 HD2 FM. Hey there, welcome back to The James Show. We're on News Talk 820 WBAP, also on 93.3 WBAP FM, 570 AM KLIF, and 96.3 HD2. In the wake of historic news, Donald Trump found guilty on 34 felony counts. No word on Hunter Biden being found guilty on anything, but we do have Donald Trump. And this follows, look, one of the parallels that I was pointing out during this process was the earlier case that happened in New York that had some of the same similarities, with a bunch of people saying, well, this shouldn't have even been brought. This is past the statute of limitations. There's no victim here. This is at worst some sort of BS paperwork crime, and he still got found guilty anyway. So I think that we just saw a repeat of that. Raven Harrison's back on the show. Your reaction to 34 felony guilties?
Well, my reaction would be the same if you told me water is wet or that communists do tyrannical things. That's what we saw. We did not see a guilty verdict by the preponderance of the evidence or beyond a reasonable doubt. We saw a jury that delivered the verdict that the judge told them to deliver, which is basically if you go outside in the morning and people have on raincoats and it's wet, you can assume it rained. Or, I mean, I've never heard of that before. So it's not that a water pipe could have burst. It's, there's no leak. It has to be a crime was committed. You basically told the jury that you can assume a crime was committed even if you didn't see one. There's no evidence of one. That is absolutely the textbook of communism. This was absolutely ridiculous. And I agree with your call-ins. Embarrassing for America that Joe Biden thinks we are this stupid, that anybody believes that this crime, with a prosecution lineup of a hooker, a whore, and a convicted liar, come up to the deck, and Stormy Daniels, the one who said nothing happened. Then she changed her story. Michael Cohen said, it was me who wrote the check and did this, and I'm already in trouble for lying. But hey, this time, wink, I'm really, 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 really telling the truth. And Biden, I had nothing to do with this. You've got to be kidding me. The American people are not this stupid, and it's not going to work. And his sentencing is 4 days before the RNC convention where he's supposed to accept the nomination, but that's a coincidence. It's terrible. It's
Raven?
a travesty, but you know what? We're going to take it.
I have to push back pretty hard on part of that. I think about 40% of this country really is that stupid. I think one of the lessons that I learned from COVID is I used to give people the benefit of the doubt. But when I saw people fall for all the COVID stuff for like 2 straight years before it dawned on them, this is kind of dumb. I think you have way too much optimism for the intellect of the average American voter, and you're never going to be disappointed underestimating these people's intelligence.
Well, I think that I'm overcompensating for the hearts of a patriot for the same reason you don't have a British accent right now, is because the heart of the patriot is strong. And everybody knows this is garbage, but now it's verbs in the sentence this time. That means we got to be lighting up those phone lines. My father says you get the government you tolerate. So if we allow them to do this without pushing back, calling, lighting up the social media, showing up and pushing back on this, then what will we get? And the 40% who are okay with this won't be when they come for you. They're going to run out of conservatives eventually, and they're going to come for you. So
Raven,
that's the essence.
We have 40% of the country right now that thinks that they are saving democracy by jailing their political opponent. And if it doesn't dawn on them after that, then I have very little optimism that this is going to turn them around.
Well, correct. You had a lot of people in Nazi Germany who believed if they narked on their friends, that they would be spared. They just got a better view of the gas chamber. And that's where we are now. Of people, how do you protect democracy by destroying it? That is the dumbest argument. Okay, that's like me telling my kids you can preserve your chewing gum by going ahead and chewing it and blowing bubbles until it melts. It doesn't work that way. But what it is now is, and this is going to be overturned. I mean, there's no element of due process that was followed in this, and those are constitutional. They just wanted the talking points. This is going to be overturned, like all the rest of them have. It's just they wanted the sensationalism, and it's not going to work. The people are going to decide. But look at this power, James. Look how this is corrupted. These dinosaurs who have been in government since before the internet, Pelosi, between all of them, have been in for decades. But yet Donald Trump is the reason all this, the country is this. It's unbelievable to me that people let their hate turn them into this, because I'm telling you, are you okay with them taking your husband out of the house?
No, and
he's guilty.
And I think that's where the real problem is. That 40% that doesn't want to see that this is a sham trial, it's because they've been trained to hate this guy, and that really is the real problem we have. Is the people that hate this guy so much they're willing to overlook all of these very questionable details surrounding all 4 of these court cases. Thank you very much. That's Raven Harrison, RavenHarrison.com. We will continue with special coverage of the Trump guilty verdicts on the James Show. 820 AM WBAP, 93.3 FM WBAP, 570 AM KLIF, and 96.3 HD2. Welcome. I'm James Parker. This is the James Show, a special edition continuing coverage of former President Donald Trump being found guilty on 34 felony counts in his New York trial just earlier today. For those of you just joining us, if you're hearing for the first time, 34 felony counts were at stake in his trial. And the jury came back today, delivered the verdict. 34 felony counts on each one of those. Guilty 34 times. We continue with a regular commentator on the James Show, Raven Harrison. So, Raven Harrison, when we look at what was the point of all this, one of them we've all speculated was to generate headlines. Well, we already have some of the headlines out. It's almost like they had these in a clipboard file and they were just waiting to hit publish. I already saw this from the Times, New York Times. Raven, you're going to love this headline. Trump convicted on all counts to become America's first felon president. And oh my, I can just hear them just being giddy and giggling when they sent that. They are so happy and proud of themselves, Raven.
Yes, because they don't believe in any kind of appeal or due process. But, here's the best part. So, James, I think you're half right. The other part is something that Joe Biden does or does not do well, which is say the quiet part out loud. So while we've all been distracted with this, anybody else realize that Joe Biden secretly authorized Ukraine to shoot missiles into Russia as an act of war against our country? Or does anybody realize that Zelensky canceled elections and has declared himself a dictator while we keep sending him billions? So that's what I want people to remember is, there's always a reason that they're trying to get smoke and mirrors. And again, it's not to bring Hunter Biden to justice. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when they found crack in the White House. But
hey, that was just cocaine. That wasn't crack. It was a bag of cocaine, not the same thing.
Okay, so you're saying it wasn't yours.
Well, I'm not going that far, Raven. I just let a guy borrow your bag for a minute, and all of a sudden he drops it at work. It's not my fault. Raven,
well, and it happens if your dad happens to be the president. You accidentally leave your blow, and that's how it goes. But what I honestly want people to remember was, again, they still haven't demonstrated a crime, James. There's not a crime. Stormy Daniels said that this didn't happen in a sworn statement.
Right, because all of these...
is a convicted liar.
Right, all of these felonies are predicated on the fact that he's covering up a crime, but we don't know what that secondary crime is. Yeah,
but they established that. They had to establish that he knowingly, paid this money. Then their star witnesses all debunked that and said, no, I'm the one who did it. He had no knowledge. Stormy Daniels, I did sign this saying I didn't, but the money was good and I changed my mind. And it's unbelievable. And then Judge Marchand, I mean, how do you go into a courtroom with a judge who's literally financially supporting your political opponent? And his daughter is raking in millions. The governor of New York has sent her $200,000, the judge's daughter, in the last week. And Adam Schiff, Kamala Harris. I mean, I don't understand how this is even considered. Are we still calling this a trial?
So this is a trial, and for the people that are expecting, well, these people are going to get their just desserts, all these people who were cheating or lying or doing something untowards, I would like to point out to all the lying and shenanigans that happened during COVID. Anthony Fauci didn't go to jail. All these lockdowns didn't go to jail. After we have all the studies back and we know all the mask mandates were for nothing, every time someone covered a kid's mouth or got kicked off an airplane or didn't let you go to your favorite restaurant, it was all for politics and all for show. And all are fraud, and none of those people have gone to jail. So I'm not that optimistic that these people aren't gonna no one's gonna follow up with these people and execute real justice. Social justice was the point.
Not the part of this corrupt administration, but that's where we the people, I just tell people, don't give up. That's why you don't have a British accent now, because, we had to fight back, and they're not going to give it up. I mean, Biden, they've all found their niche right now, just showing the American people they don't respect the people who put them there. They are there to enrich themselves and to do whatever they have to do. And it's up to we the people to go, you know what? Your license has been revoked, and we have to show up. And that's the most important thing to remember. I mean, because like you said, Hillary didn't go to prison. She bleached, bit, and destroyed evidence, and Hunter Biden defied a congressional subpoena. He's still walking around. His father smuggled him to the White House. I mean, but we're allowing that, and the left is okay with that as long as they agree with the platform. But eventually, tyrants don't share power. So right now it may feel okay that they're all focused on Donald Trump, but they will turn their soon it'll be you, James, you know what? We don't like the way he did that last podcast, and we're going to put him in front of a judge who hates him. One of his ex-girlfriends or something. I mean, you can't do that. This is not how America runs. And so we have got to remind these politicians who they answer to. And I tell people, get loud. Doesn't mean you have to turn over tables. It means you have to show up. You have to push back.
Well, for the side of the aisle that claims that they're the resistance and they're the rebels and they're fighting against the man and they're fighting against fascism and authoritarians and tyrannies and dictators, Don't you think that they notice that all the people in power are on their side? The people who rigged the election, they rigged it in favor of your side. The people who rigged this court system, they rigged it in favor of your side. Donald Trump is not one of the protected elite privileged ones. That's the Hunter Bidens of the world. I think I wouldn't be too surprised if we look back in about a week and the polling shoots up very much in favor of Donald Trump because they've made him such a sympathetic figure with these weak cases.
Correct, and they've given him so much press. So what you fear, you create. But what these people are saying right now is because they're getting what they want. They hate Donald Trump, so this feels like justice to them. But what they don't realize is it's not justice, and it will. Those are your rights. You are allowing them to assassinate, whether you give them up or not. Those are still your rights. The due process, to a fair jury, and cruel and unusual punishment. And if you're okay with that, then I would like you to substitute Donald Trump's name and put your own loved one's name in there and see if it still sounds like, hey, my dad's a good guy, but if Joe Biden says he's guilty and then brings the heat, then you wouldn't say that if it was somebody that you loved. And all these Democrats loved Donald Trump until he ran for office. They were all looking for favors and handouts and, hey, can I come to your party and can you help me out with this? Until he ran for president, went, whoa, what are you guys doing here? Then that's when it got spicy. So I remind people, all these Democrats loved him until he said, you can't do this. We can't do this. Our country can't take him. He's been saying this for years. And then he switched sides, and then all of a sudden now he's the devil. But it's not going to work. The American people see right through it. The trick is we got to get up and do something, Patriots. We can't just sit and complain about it. We got to push back.
Man, I like you when you're all fired up, Raven Harrison. RavenHarrison.com is her website. You can find where else can they find you outside the James Show?
Oh, they can find me at the RoarPack.com and the Roar Mission. We're going to put verbs in the sentences and tell people exactly how we're going to get it done.
All right. I look forward to the debate on the 27th. Are you planning on going to any debate watching parties?
Oh, I've got all the popcorn ready, and people who don't have a place to go can come watch it here in Dallas with us. But yeah, we're going to get it ready, and we'll be ready for the convention because they're sentencing him 4 days before the RNC convention. That's not a coincidence, but nothing they can do. They can insult him and mock him, but they can't stop him.
Thank you very much. That's Raven Harrison on the James Show. Now, I want to hear from you because I want to ask you some of the same questions I just made Raven answer. Do you think this will help him or hurt him in the polls? Do you think this was a fair trial? And if you're one of the people that believes 2020, the election was rigged and these trials are rigged, what makes you think it's not going to be rigged in November? And really, the question is, what are you going to do about it? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Senator Mike Lee says, congrats, progressives. You just guaranteed Trump's re-election. Really? Do you agree with that? 800-288-9227. More breaking coverage of the Trump guilty verdict coming up next on The James Show. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, 93.3 FM WBAP, 570 AM KLIF, and 96.3 KSCS HD2. And the reason you're hearing me instead of your normal programming right now is because we are in a special historic moment. First time we have a president who has been found guilty of even jaywalking, but we have 34 felony counts, guilty on all 34 counts. I'm getting your reaction in real time. And for those of you, I'm sorry I'm interrupting your normal guy. And I know you love him. For those of you who are Mark Levin listeners, listen, I'll only be here for the rest of the hour. I'm going to be fielding calls from you and talking about this from a local Texas point of view. And then I'll turn you back over to Mark Levin. I know I miss him too. I love him too. And if you listen long enough, Mark Levin fans, you'll notice that I have adopted some of the language and the way he uses some certain words from his book, Liberty and Tyranny. That was a book I read more than 10 years, whenever it came out, like 15 something years ago. And you'll see a strong overlap with the way I approach my criticism of a lot of these issues is borne out and has a lot of ideological basis from Mark Levin. Like, I really appreciate how he uses the term status. Anyway, go read that book. If you're only going to read one Mark Levin book, make it Liberty and Tyranny, because some of the stuff he spells out here goes to answer why people are doing what they're doing today, why so many people are willing to set aside these constitutional norms, these historic precedents, and these rules that we thought everyone was following. There's all of a sudden being broken now. And it's to serve the purpose of the state. It's not even really to serve the purpose of the Democrat Party as much as it is just I don't want to talk about the general concept of the state because I don't want to get bogged down in philosophical whatever. But it really boils down to, on the ground level, hate. Half of your neighbors have been fed a steady diet of hate for this guy for the last 10 or so years. And once you've been convinced of absurdities. This guy is Hitler. He hates women. They want to control women's bodies. He hates minorities. He wants to grind poor people underfoot and give tax breaks to the wealthy millionaires and billionaires. And they're just going to light their cigars with $100 bills and laugh into the sunset. I mean, once you've gotten half, really, I think it's about 40% of the population to believe in this caricature of what they paint of Trump, only then will they accept the atrocities that are happening in the legal system. And that's a poster that happens over and over and over, especially throughout the 20th century. Once you can convince a population or a society to believe absurdities, only then can you get them to commit atrocities. Think of how bad and how long they had to fuel anti-Jewish hate in the Weimar Republic for the Nazis to end up in power and for the Holocaust to open up. You first had to get them to believe absurdities before you could get them to accept atrocities. And in this one, the people who are looking the other way, where you see an obvious injustice, where they're finagling the definition of a federal crime being prosecuted at the state level, and then we're doing some other mental gymnastics to get around the statute of limitations, and then we still don't know what the secondary crime is, and we have some very questionable witnesses, and then we have some very questionable court rules and some very questionable jury rules, and they're willing to overlook all this because they think they're fighting Hitler. And once you can convince some people that they're fighting Hitler, you'd be amazed at how flexible they get with their ethics, because they think they're now justified. They now think that they're doing the right thing. 800-288-9227. So the question isn't, well, how do you get the powers to be to stop this? No, the powers that be will always take as much power as we let them. I think the real question that I want answers to, that I don't have answers to, is how do we get this other 40% of the population to say, hey, politically I oppose this guy, but locking him up, that's not how we save democracy, by jailing our political opponents. I think that's where the real solution could be. I'd love to hear from you, though. 800-288-9227. I realize I'm talking out of base speculation. That's all we have to go on right now. 800-288-9227. Rob in Waco, you're on the James Show with James Parker. Your response to Trump's guilty verdict. Rob in Waco, you're on the air.
Hey, thanks for it. I'm going to be honest, man, it's a sad day. I mean, if they can do this to a former president, they can definitely do this to anyone else, just the common person, the blue-collar person. And the only way we can defeat this is what you were talking about, that 40%. Every person who believes in democracy has to invade the ballot box and has to not sit back and say, oh, somebody else will do it. We've got to take the responsibility as U.S. citizens and stand up and say, we're not going to allow this. That's how you do it.
Well, I like how sober you sound. You don't sound very histrionic or emotional, but also I like how you're solution oriented. And when you look at it that way, okay, we had this bad news that just happened within like an hour or so. What's a lesson to learn forward here? Well, if there's so much rigging going on, the election of 2020, perhaps, some people even said 2016 was rigged. So we all agree that election rigging's going on. What do you do about it? Well, what you can do as a common man, and I don't mean you, Rob, I mean really the people listening to us, is that go volunteer. Are you volunteering to be a poll worker? When you go show up and you show them your license, and there's two people on each side that make dual copies of your signature and verify your ID, you need to be one of those people. That's how we make sure this doesn't get taken from us in November, but also it's not going to happen here. We're in a red state. We need to be talking to people in swing that are in the hyper blue urban areas of swing states, because that's where we need the poll workers who are going to make sure that we don't get railroaded again. But I love your call. Thank you very much, Rob in Waco.
Thank you.
All right, if you want to be next, 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Now, one of the big motivating drivers of what this has been all about, and not from you, from the people who don't agree with you, is the ability to get the headlines. They've been dying to write Trump is a convicted felon in a headline. Well, they've already done it. If you get on your phone and you start going through social media or start going through the nose, oh man, it's like they already had it written into their computer and they already had had it saved in their drafts folder, and they were finally able to just hit publish because they've got the headlines. Donald Trump found guilty on 34 counts to become America's first ex-felon president. Oh, that's just that's like when you eat a piece of dark chocolate from Belgium and it just melts in your mouth, or when you have like that cotton candy and it just dissolves on your tongue and your brain just goes like, that's the noise they were making when they hit publish on that article that said Trump's a convicted felon. They're just, this is the greatest day of their little biased life, isn't it? You know how happy the little reporters are at the New York Times or Washington Post or whatever. Boy, they just live for this. For those of you just joining us, 34 counts, 34 guilties. We have a sentencing date of July 11th. July 11th has been noted because it's going to be in that little sweet spot between the first debate that's happening on June 27th and then the Republican convention is just a few days after that. So July 11th is where we get the next step in this plot line spelling out before you. And this will be a big one because now the question becomes, are they going to try and send this dude to prison? Or is he going to get one of these, well, you get probation or you probably get, I don't know. I think they want to do something. They probably want to put an ankle monitor on him, just not because it's effective. Ankle monitors are horribly ineffective. They're a pain in the butt. They don't work. But what is it? It's humiliating. It's like putting the scarlet letter on him. I think these people have no idea what they're doing. You put an ankle monitor on him, what kind of sympathetic figure does that make him? Yeah. So I'll be interested to see, just like you, on July 11th, what they think that they're going to do to punish this guy. And they are running right into the all-time backfires. Because, look, when you read in history, the reason that they always send these people into exile, or the reason they send them to prison instead of just killing them, is because when you go too far, you make them a sympathetic figure. The blowback is worse than having them alive. And I think, we're testing the limits of our fellow Americans' ability to cover their eyes and pretend like bad things aren't happening. And you send this guy to prison, I don't think it's going to go the way they think it's going to go. I think they need to be happy with being able to say convicted felon Donald Trump. They probably need to do some slap on the wrist. But if they put him in a jumpsuit, I mean, we will know who the good guys are and who's the persecuted political prisoner now. Because that's what you would make him. I'm not saying you would make him like a Nelson Mandela, but the record of history is pretty crystal clear that if you're the guy that is jailing your political opponents and throwing them in prison just a few months before people go to the ballot box, you're probably not the good guy. Now, the guy in the jumpsuit's not always the good guy. Sometimes he's also a bad guy, but we know the dude that's throwing him in prison is the bad guy. And look, they need to take their little talking point of being able to say convicted felon Donald Trump and just be happy with that, because prison is not going to go the way they think. And it's also just going to be fun to hear them say over and over and over for the next few months, oh, really? You'd rather vote for a convicted felon than Joe Biden, or convicted felon than your principals, or convicted. That's just get ready to hear that. All right, I'm talking to you next. I see a bunch of good callers lining up, and you can get in line too. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's The James Show, special edition of The James Show on News Talk 820 WBAP, now on 93.3 FM WBAP, 570 AM KLIF, and 96.3 KSCS HD2. We're streaming online, and I get an aggregate of you people's comments. And Kay says, seriously, where's Mark? Mark Levin is going to come back at the end of this hour. Mark Levin will be back on in less than 30 minutes. I am just doing special coverage for this 1 hour because it's such a historic breaking news moment. And I understand. I love Mark Levin, too. And I am no viable replacement for that guy. But this is it's just a special occasion. Okay. So, and look, for new people who aren't aware, I'm the guy who comes on before Mark Levin on this station, and or at least on WBAP. And for a lot of people, you get off work at 5, you turn on your car. You didn't even know I even existed until now. Well, find me online, and we can be friends after this. I'm on social media. Sorry, my name's so generic. James Parker, though. Just look for James Parker Radio. For all you guys on hold, I'm going to talk to you next after we check in with Cal Jillson. He is a political analyst from SMU. And I know your name, so I think you've been on the show before, haven't you, Cal?
Probably so, James, but we're here today.
Okay, so my first question for someone with more legal expertise, or at least political expertise than me, is, okay, he's found guilty on 34 counts. 34 felony counts sounds like this guy's going to go to jail, but other people that I've seen say even if he's found guilty on all these, that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to jail. What do you think? What's the likelihood this guy's actually going to be put in cuffs and go to a jail?
Well, I think they're very slim. The judge who Trump was railing against just a few minutes ago after the trial will do the sentencing several weeks from now, and there's a range from probation to 4 years in jail. Plus, there are monetary fines. Trump has never been convicted of a felony, so this is his first conviction. Usually that means, in a case like this, probation. And so that's what I expect to happen. But again, Trump's lawyers have no control over him. So he went out and ripped the judge that is going to sentence him a few weeks from now. So he's a hard man to control, and we'll see what sort of relationship between him and this judge develops in the coming weeks.
So the sentencing is 100% going to be decided by the judge?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I can see why you'd want to stay on his good side, but the judge already hates him. So what's it hurt to go out there and rip him a little bit today?
Well, it certainly made the former president feel better. And I think he takes exactly that view. He said explicitly many times, including just a few minutes ago, that this thing is a hoax. It's a put-up job. The Biden administration did it. He did nothing wrong. And so that is his view, and he thinks that this judge is corrupt and said so. But most lawyers advise most clients not to antagonize the judge that is going to sentence them. But this is not most people. This is Donald Trump.
All right, Cal Jillson from SMU. My next question is, what is going to happen to this judge if, when it gets reviewed on appeal, that there were some mistakes made or some laws broken or some ethical boundaries crossed? Is there any recourse if he did do anything that was out of bounds?
Well, there will certainly be an appeal, and the appeal will be based on law and facts. And it's oftentimes the case that a judge is charged to the jury, which comes at the very end, where the judge explains what the legal provisions are, what it takes to find a person guilty, those kinds of things. There can be mistakes made there. And if mistakes are made, then the verdict is overturned on appeal. The judge is not usually sanctioned unless there's something explicitly corrupt, and Trump believes that there is. But it's uncommon for judges to be sanctioned simply because one of their cases is overturned.
Yeah, I've never even heard of that. I mean, the closest I can think is the Al C. Hastings case where he was censured, but it wasn't for that. Yeah,
that's right. Judges, the reason we have trial courts, appellate courts, and the Supreme Court, state Supreme Court, is that judges do make mistakes. And sometimes they allow questions they shouldn't have allowed. Sometimes they allow evidence to be submitted that they shouldn't have. Sometimes they make decisions about whether a person's prior bad acts, is a phrase that people have heard, can be brought into the current case to show a pattern. And you just can't let the prosecution talk about a whole bunch of extraneous cases, they're proving the case that's before them. So it's possible that he made some mistakes. And when an appellate court overturns a judge, they do it in whole or in part, right? In whole means you overturn the whole case. In part, you overturn elements of it. So we'll see how this plays out.
Thank you very much, Cal Jillson from SMU.
Thank you, James.
All right, we are awaiting remarks. We're expecting remarks from Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA. I think he had to stop by Golden Corral real quick. But if he comes in before the end of the hour, then we will break in with live coverage of that. This is special coverage of the Trump guilty verdict. I'm James Parker. This is a special edition of The James Show. Across 820 AM, WBAP, 93.3 FM, WBAP, 570 AM, KLIF, and 96.3 KSCS HD2.
This is a breaking news alert from News Talk 820 WBAP.
And now on FM at 93.3.
James Parker here. We're breaking in. Alvin Bragg, Manhattan DA, is having a news conference after the Trump conviction. We go live.
Good evening. First and foremost, I want to thank the jury for its service. Jurors perform a fundamental civic duty. Their service is literally the cornerstone of our judicial system. We should all be thankful for the careful attention that this jury paid to the evidence and the law and their time and commitment over these past several weeks. 12 everyday New Yorkers, and of course, our alternates, heard testimony from 22 witnesses, including former and current employees of the defendant, media executives, book publishers, custodians of records, and others. They reviewed call logs, text messages, and emails. They heard recordings. They saw checks and invoices, bank statements, and calendar appointments. This type of white-collar prosecution is core to what we do at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. In the 1930s, District Attorney Thomas Dewey ushered in the era of the modern, independent professional prosecutor. For now nearly 90 years, dedicated professionals in this office have built upon that fine tradition. A major part of our practice during that nearly 90 years has been public integrity work, including cases involving jurists, local and state electeds, public servants, and others. I want to thank this phenomenal prosecution team, embodying the finest traditions of this office: professionalism, integrity, dedication, and service. They are model public servants, and I am proud and humbled to serve side by side with them. The 12 everyday jurors vowed to make a decision based on the evidence and the law, and the evidence and the law alone. Their deliberations led them to a unanimous conclusion beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, Donald J. Trump, is guilty of 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree to conceal a scheme to corrupt the 2016 election. And while this defendant may be unlike any other in American history, we arrived at this trial and ultimately today at this verdict in the same manner as every other case that comes through the courtroom doors, by following the facts and the law, and doing so without fear or favor.
Okay, that's Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg holding a news conference after the Trump conviction, found guilty on 34 counts. I want to hear from you. I don't want to hear from Alvin Bragg. Let's talk to Brooke in Frisco. You're on a whole bunch of stations right now. What is your reaction to Trump's guilty verdict?
The fact that, okay, the question is, what are they so afraid of? The moment he became president, they've done nothing but harass him and lie about him. And the fact is that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and Hillary Clinton, those are the ones who should be in jail, and probably a lot more. But the thing is, why are they trying to bring him down so hard? It's because they're afraid of him. And people need to not believe what they're trying to show about Donald Trump. They need to do some research, and they need to think for themselves and not let the media think for them, and ask themselves, why are they so afraid of Donald Trump? Because there's no other president in history that has fought so hard and has gone so hard. Most others would have already quit. They would not have let themselves been dragged through the mud like this. But he is the one who cares for our country, and he cares for the American people. And this is, yes, if somebody asks me, are you going to vote for a felon? I'm going to say yes. I would rather vote for somebody that was wrongly convicted of 34 counts than someone who wants to end our freedom.
You see, but that's what the other side says about Donald Trump. They say Donald Trump wants to end your freedom. Donald Trump wants to be an authoritarian dictator that erodes your rights. And then the pro-Trump people say that about the forces aligned against him. How are both people aiming for the same goal but coming to completely different conclusions?
And what they're trying to do is confuse people and brainwash people and tell lies. And Donald Trump is not the one that we need to be afraid of. They have a plan for us, and that plan will be carried out in 2030. Their plan is for us to own nothing and be happy about it. That's their plan.
Right. What was that from, like, the World Economic Forum? You'll own nothing and be happy.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
The communists have not been a big fan of private property rights since their inception. So that's no big shock there. But Brooke, I like how not emotional and measured you'd sound. I figured a lot of Trump supporters would be pretty sensational and yelling and angry. And I like because this is the reaction I've gotten from most people who've called in. It's almost like you're a little more sober and focused and resolved now. And I don't think this is going to have the reaction from the American public that the people persecuting Donald Trump think it's going to have.
No, I don't think so. I think it's going to have the opposite reaction. I was really upset. I said, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. Like, seriously, that was my reaction. But, I mean, what can we do? We need to stand up for somebody who's willing to be drugged through the mud when he could be living his life of luxury. I don't see why people can't see this. I just don't understand.
Totally agree.
Right in front of your eyes.
Well, I wish I had more time to talk to you, Brooke, and all you other people who called in and I didn't get a chance to talk to you during this special moment. Thank you for taking the time and trying to be a part of the conversation. Again, for those people just joining us, Trump found guilty 34 felony counts earlier today in a New York courtroom. Sentencing will happen on July 11th. And that'll do it for our special coverage. We will now go back to regular programming after this. I know all you Mark Levin fans, you can quit sending me messages on Facebook. Who are you? Why don't we have Mark? You're about to get him. But for the new people I just met today, I wish I could have met you under better circumstances. But you should check out my show sometime. I'm on right before Mark Levin on WBAP from 2 to 5 on weekdays. And if you're not available to listen to the radio at that time, you can get the podcast and check it out with fewer commercials. WBAP app and WBAP.com. Just look for me, James Parker, The James Show. It's easy to remember. All right, stay put. Don't go anywhere. More coverage of the Trump verdict in whatever form or fashion on whatever station you're listening to. This has been James Parker on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, 93.3 FM WBAP, 570 AM KLIF, and 96.3 KSCS HD2.